Hello YouTube and welcome to my brand new channel, The Aerodactyl. I'm Arrow and I am here to sort out some of the craziest, newest leaks and rumors we have floating around since the big reveal we had yesterday about the Alola forms. First, we have to address these rumors with the right kind of lens. We have to do this with any rumors or any potential leaks. So the first thing we need to do is the Arrow rules, I'm going to call them, is one, you need to do this objectively, which means as much as you may want something, you cannot, or not want something, you cannot argue simply for or against based solely on your desires. You need to look at what's possible and what's realistic. Two, you need to check your sources as best as possible. You need to get time and date. You need to figure out where it was from. All this stuff is very, very relevant. And thirdly, you must always remain skeptical until reveal. Even if 99% of it has been revealed, you cannot 100% put any stock in anything until it's 100% revealed. So always retain that little bit of skepticism. It doesn't mean you have to be mean, doesn't mean you have to be a troll about it, but never say this is 100% for certain. Remember, everything is opinion and subjective. So without further ado, I will continue. Alright guys, I'm going to be looking at three specific leaks right now that are the most popular. The first is most commonly known as the Chinese leak. The second is most commonly known as the Reddit leak, but for this purpose, I'm going to start calling it the Bewear leak because it wasn't from Reddit and it's a little bit misleading. And finally, the third is the July 4th leak. That's what it's most commonly being referred to as right now, and I will explain these in detail, so if you don't know what I'm talking about, hold on and you soon will. Another thing that we need to mention too before I continue is the concept art leak. Now, most of you have probably already seen this. I'm going to flash it on the screen for you, and I'm not going to go into too much detail. I don't know where this originally came from. This is months old. I believe it was originally posted on 4chan, but a lot of it was arguing over whether it was real or not, but it seems right now that we can officially call it true because it has revealed a character that we were just shown to be in the artwork as seen in Litton's thing. And this character is Mallow, the trial captain. And you can see here, this is, you can see her hair. It's a perfect matchup. She's also doing some boiling water with tea, and she's known to be a cook. So it's very specific information that would be very difficult for somebody to just guess or randomly draw. So this almost confirms the leaks. Again, we need to hold some skepticism because there's reasons why this could still be wrong, and I'll get into them later. But as of right now, we can assume with some certainty that these are most likely our starter evolutions. Okay, so the first leak we're going to look at today is the Chinese leak. It is possibly the oldest leak, and apparently initially leaked about 2 weeks before the Salandit reveal, which was on July 3rd. So we can potentially date this leak back to around June 20th. However, it is difficult finding proof for this exact date. When this rumor first became popular and well known was after the Salandit reveal on around July 4th, July 5th, around this time. So without further ado, let's check on this leak right now. I'm going to flash it up on the screen for you guys to read along, but I'm just going to sum it up really quickly. This original one contained this information. This was what was most popularized. It talked about Rowlet, Litton, and Popplio evolving into a archer, a wrestler, and a siren. And keep in mind, this was before the concept art was confirmed. So this was back around July 4th. Again, this is before the concept art had some validity to it. So keep that in mind. It also predicted a mushroom, a dolphin, a sea cucumber, a snowman, and some sort of rugby Pokemon. Rugby monkey, we have yet to see any of those. It said that Rockruff will evolve into a werewolf. It said that Marshadow would have a very unique typing. It talked about districts where powerful Pokemon known as overlords would reside. It said there was no gym leaders, and part of the plot of the game was forming a league, and that each island had its own protector and island leader that would later go on to form the Elite Four. It said that the diamonds in the bracelets were collectible and seemed to unlock functions somewhat similar to Mega Evolution. And it also finally said that you can ride almost any Pokemon, though what almost any wasn't made quite clear. So this is the most known information about this leak. I'm going to go into a little bit of greater detail and a little bit of bigger background for this, because the first leak that's been going around, the one that I just showed to you guys, is just a summary of what originally transpired in a full-out conversation on Smogan's thread. So I pulled this up here for you. It's an interesting read. I can flash a little bit on the screen. It's very choppy. It's just back and forth dialogue. But what's really pertinent in here is that the original translation said that the logo diamonds were like mega stones, and they would cause Pokemon to transform shape, like Ash Greninja. It also said that the new wristband can make all abilities stronger. So this is something that wasn't in the original summary, but is good information to know that we need to keep in mind and keep note for later. The next leak we're going to look at is what is being commonly referred to as the July 4th leak, simply because that is when it's leaked. So July 4th, we have a timestamp. July 4th is when it first came out. However, this leak did not become very popular or very well known until just in these last few days. So until August 2nd, August 3rd, when all of this new information drops. So I'm going to read it verbatim for you guys here to get the full context, and I'm going to flash it on the screen. All right. Once it has learned Howl, you can choose to leave Rockruff by one of 4 cliffs, 1 per island overnight. It will have evolved when you return in the morning. The evolved form takes up 1 Pokédex slot, but each island gets a different form with unique stats and typing. Like Rockruff, the starters have multiple final evolutions, one when evolved during the day and one evolved at night. Like Rockruff, they take up 1 Pokédex slot, but have different type stats / move pools. Some old Pokemon found in Alola are different to those found in other regions, namely their markings colors. Example, Alolan Pidove are purely white. Number 4, Arbok and a few others have unique markings depending on capture region. 6 total variations, the Kanto Johto, Hoenn, Sinnoh, Unova, Kalos, and Alola. Some old Pokemon heights and weights are different when encountered in Alola. The models are changed accordingly. Example, Dodrio are taller and have longer, thicker legs compared to other regions. Unique breeding ancestors have gone the way of the dodo, now hatch like any other Pokemon. Number 7, some old Pokemon stats have been changed flip. Example, Alolan and Rapidash have better special attack than attack. Number 8, Pokemon transferred from older gens or caught in other regions maintain their stats and appearance. These are new variants, not new Pokemon, but they're designed to give players more variety. Number 9, bank transfers from Gen 6 also will learn the same moves at same levels based in X and Y and Oris. No Gen 7 moves are available to them except via TM/HM. And finally, number 10, Pokemon transferred from the VC or BYG will have the Gen 5 typing stats for those Pokemon. So this, you might have heard, is the newest leak. It's been going around. It's become very popular because a lot of people who don't like the starter evolutions that we've seen really like the idea of a second form being unlockable, so that it gives us hope that there's another typing. But some further information that hasn't actually become very popular and isn't noticed by many in this leak is there's also a second post made by the original poster who added more information. The information they added was 3 points. First, that Ash Greninja is in the game and there are no new Megas. And number 2 is there's a new 2-stage cat Pokemon, normal type when found in the wild, but second type can be added via breeding. Breath of Fire type, babies normal fire, Breath of Grass poison, yada yada, you get the drill. And it also says that number 3, Lily has a Zygarde cell in her bag, and that's how you get Zygarde 10% form. It says around the 3rd gym. This is very important because it mentions gyms, which we know are not a thing, but it also mentions Ash Greninja and a few other things that are becoming important later, so let's just keep that in mind. But that's all the information that is pertained in the July 4th leak. And finally, the last leak we're going to look at is what I'm calling the Bewear leak, which has been commonly referred to as the Reddit leak, but as I said, it did not originate on Reddit. From what I've heard, it didn't originally, it just was made popular on Reddit. This is a very popular leak, and we can date this leak to about a few days before Mimikyu and Bewear got their English names, and that was around July 15th. So this is around the 13th, maybe as far back as the 12th, but this is where we can put it, July 12th. So this is a good week, if not more, after the previous 2 leaks. But this one has a lot of information. I'm going to flash it on the screen for you here. This is what this rumor includes. It says there are actually no gyms. There is more than one evolution for Rockruff, including a werewolf. Yungoos evolution is fat and hairy. Time works differently in each version. There are new forms of old Pokemon, which are not Megas. but more like Shellos Wormadam. We saw this as the Alola forms. It gives a couple of examples like Butterfree, Rattata, Ninetales, etc. It says that Pokemon transferred from the VC releases will have pre-Gen 6 typings and stats. It says that the stone bracelets have nothing to do with Tinker Evolution. It says that Ash Greninja is in the game, that the SS Ann appears in the game, that there's a larger but not by much amount of brand new Pokemon. That's not really a leak, but regardless, it says some old characters appear. Looker, Cynthia, Blue, Zinnia, AZ. It says that Frufru's haircut can be changed in the new Me. Some new forms of old Pokemon get new animations. Mentions the Aberline. Transferring through Bank will be the only way to get some forms of old Pokemon. It says there is a flying type bird whose appearance varies each island. There's a 2-stage cat Pokemon that is normal when captured but will inherit its father's primary type as its second type and has a color pattern varied for each type. It says there's also a snowman Pokemon. And now here you are probably hearing some things that are very similar to other leaks that we've just mentioned. And so this is where things get dicey and where we have to start piecing them all together, and what I'm here to do for you right now. We're going to go back and take a look at them and figure out what they got right, what they got wrong, what information they share. And this is how we're going to break them apart and get a better idea of what could possibly happen and what is the most true information and what we think is the most false information in all of this. But don't let anybody tell you that one of these is all false or one of these is all true, because each one of them has very specific things that came true and very specific things that didn't. So none of them have 100% proven information, but there is things about them that we can look at. So let's go back to the Chinese leak, and I'm going to start with, what did it get right? It correctly predicted the Rowlet, Litten, and Popplio evolutions with the Archer, Wrestler, and Siren. This isn't 100% thing. This is definitely one of those, take it with a grain of skepticism, because we actually haven't had these forms proven, but we have had some of the concept art proven-ish, as I showed earlier. So this is a point for it right now. Another thing that it correctly predicted was the special areas on the map with the districts and the powerful Pokemon known as Overlords. This seems to be a really big hint at what we got to look at the Totem Pokemon. Again, there is no specific wording of the Totem Pokemon, but we have to remember that this information was originally translated, so that translation, we can expect there to be changes. So something to keep in mind. Doesn't prove it, but this is something it seems to get right. The third thing it really seemed to get right was the no gym leaders. And it also said that there would be an island leader for each, and so we now know that we have the island kahunas, and they are going to be a big part, and we also know that we have the trial leaders. So these are the things it seemed to get right. But let's look at the things it got wrong, because it did get some things wrong. First of all, we have no confirmation on this plot point of forming a league. It does not seem that we will actually be forming an Elite Four. It seems to be actually almost the opposite, that we are celebrating the Alolan culture for what it is, and we are taking on the island trials as like what the Alolan people will do. There seems to be no hint so far that we are going to be creating a league, or that a league needs to be created, or that they're going to form an Elite Four. That doesn't seem like our mission, and I think our mission is just to do the island trials. So that's one thing. Second thing, it did say in the extended info, when we look at the original source, that the stones unlock forms. Now, we know this is not true. This is not unlock forms, but in fact moves, and not forms at all. And apparently they're supposed to use to access Ash Greninja. That could be true, but it looks so far like no, that is not the case, because this is just to unlock these Z moves. So it got that super wrong. And finally, it says we can ride almost any Pokemon. And that's really vague, but we can see right now that it's just been shown that this is a rental service. This is not our own Pokemon, and each Pokemon shown seems to have a very specific function. One, Tauros, is seen breaking rocks, Mudsdale climbing rough terrain, Sharpedo is just like crunching its way through rocks. Like, it looks like we're going to have not more Pokemon than before, but very specific ones, and arguably not all of them. So that's another point against it. All right, now let's look at the July 4th leak. What did it get right, and what did it get wrong? I think this leak is under the most scrutiny at this exact moment in time, because it has less going for it in terms of proving its validity. But I think we need to take it on the same level as these other two leaks of the Bewear leak and the Chinese leak, because this is one of the oldest leaks. It's dated July 4th, and it's proven on that. We can't even get the proof for the Chinese leak, and we know that the Bewear leak is not this old. and it has a lot of the same information as the Bewear leak. So it's not piggybacking off of the Bewear leak, it's before the Bewear leak. It's mostly because a lot of its points hasn't been proven yet. We haven't seen anything to prove it. We haven't seen anything to disprove it. We haven't seen anything to prove it. The only thing we've seen that really gives it validity is talking about the forms. But that is a very important thing because the forms are one of those things that would be very, very difficult to guess. Just like someone randomly drawing characters in fake concept art. That's why we have more confidence in that leak. But in this one, we can have more confidence because no one was really predicting Alolan forms. It's a very new move for Pokemon. It wasn't rumored. There was no hints at it. But what this leak gets wrong, and what it gets really wrong, is it mentions the third gym. And that's 100% wrong, because we know we don't have gyms, we have trials, we have no gyms. So, my only explanation for this is that the trials are very similar to gyms, and perhaps they meant third trial instead of the gym. But, that is a big thing to keep in mind. And finally, we're going to wrap up this with what did the Bewear leak get right and what did it get wrong? It successfully predicted that there was no gyms. One thing it does mention as well that is really, really important is the flying type bird whose appearance varies each island, and we definitely got that with Oricorio. So that is something that makes it look 100% true right there. But even so, there are still some things that it got wrong. It mentions the Alolan forms, which is something it got right, but it did get the Ninetales form wrong. It said it was Fire Fairy. We now know that it is Ice Fairy. To its credit, I would say that if you just look at Ninetales, I'm going to flash Ninetales right now, Ice Ninetales. If you didn't know it was Ice type, like say you just had the image, there actually isn't anything on here that says this is ice type. It's not dripping with icicles. Its coloring is almost identical to the shiny form with the white and silver and blue eyes. And it's just very wispy and ethereal. So, somebody could just be looking at that and said, oh yeah, it's still fire, but now it has a fairy type because it's all pretty. That's something we can assume that maybe this person did. But again, this is just opinion. It's just something to keep in mind. Another thing it seemed to get wrong is the young goose evolution is fat and hairy. This is another subjective thing, but looking at this, to me, this doesn't seem fat and hairy at all. I think there's arguably fatter and hairier Pokemon that exist. If anything, it actually has a detective motif you can see in its design and its little fur tufts that make it look like it has the coat and its positioning. So it did seem to get that wrong as well. So now that we've looked at what they got right, what it got wrong, the last thing we need to look at is who shares the same information in each leak. And I think this is important because so far I would say the most true leak is the Bewear leak. It's had the most come correct. It mentions no gyms, it mentions the Alolan forms, it mentions the stone bracelets having nothing to do with synchro evolution, and it mentions Oricorio, and those are I think the most hardest things. But I think what is the most interesting about this leak is that most of its information it shares with the July 4th leak. And we know for a fact that the July 4th leak is before this leak. So if one of them is true, it begs to reason that the other one might be. This one would have had to borrow from the July 4th leak. The Bewear leak came after. So I think it's what gives the July 4th leak more credibility is because it shares a lot of the same information with this, and it came first, so it was the first to share it. Some of the information it shares of that is that they both say that Ash Greninja is in the game. They both mention the Alolan forms, and they talk about the pre-Gen 6 typings and how all that's going to work out, and that hints at it. Some of their information also seems to be similar. The Doduoline is sought to be fighting and flying in the Bewear leak, but the July 4th leak mentions Dodrio having thicker legs and being taller, and that actually really, that description fits with what a fighting, flying Doduoline typing would be. So those seem to link up, and then they both predict this 2-stage cat Pokemon that is normal in capture but can inherit all of the others' typings as a second typing through breeding. And again, that is a very specific thing, and we can't prove or disprove this. This could be false information, but they both have this. All right, now that we've looked at what they got right, what they got wrong, when these leaks are from, what they say, what information they share, I think I want to talk about which one of these are most likely true and which aren't. I actually think we can safely say at this point that all three of them might very well be true. I think they have enough going for them for us to keep them on the radar, and I think they're safe to speculate on. All of them have gotten some information wrong, but I think with any leak or rumor, that's pretty standard. There's several reasons this could happen. One, they could be intentionally putting in false information so that they don't get caught and they don't end up in lawsuits and that kind of thing. Another thing is that they could just have made an honest human mistake. I think things like missing a type or saying the word gym or overlord instead of like totem or trial is just kind of common error. It could even be a translation thing, depending where these people got their information. They may not be getting it straight in their own native language. And then there's just also the consideration that they don't have some of the information they had or have access to was just preliminary stuff, was just concepts or ideas that never actually made it into the game. So maybe they did have information, but it just never went through. So those are reasons that some of the stuff that they mention we can't always believe. Now, even though I'm saying right now that I think there's reasons to believe all of them, if I had to put them on a scale of what is most believable to what is the most unbelievable, I would actually say that the Chinese leak is the most unbelievable right now, and that the most believable is probably the Bewear leak in combination with the July 4th leak. I think that's wraps it up. So please give your thoughts in your comments below. Maybe there's something I got wrong that I'm going to have to correct. Maybe you have other theories. Maybe there's other things you've noticed. But hopefully this just gives a little bit of background. So do your rumor checks, do your leak checks, know your information, and before you get into a fight, make sure you know what every one of them is saying and how they link together and think about it long and hard. And for now, I'd say keep these on your radar.